My life be like, yeah. My life be like, yeah.
Good morning, guys. Pops Paladin here, once again back with Heroic Antoran. We're going to move on to Antoran High Command, and this fight is pretty unique in the fact that we get to operate part of the machinery that the bosses get to use, as well as, you know, actual do boss type smacky damagey things. And so to kind of get you introduced into this one, the basic gear set that I'm wearing is what I have been wearing for the previous bosses here. Same talent build as well. And the reason, once again, is because I wanted to make sure that I had the raid mechanic callouts correct, and so I don't have to worry about my survivability in DPS mode, so it's still all the same. In terms of overall damage taken for this specific fight, it is 90% physical damage, and so running Soul of the High Lord isn't that important, but I just ran it as that extra little buffer, just to make sure that I had this stuff going on. So defensive buffs that I had: Shield of the Righteous, 65% uptime, could have been better, once again at the 70%, but my Blessed Stalwart buff was pretty darn high at 73%, so yay. My Consecration buff is up there as well, which means I was standing in a lot, which is weird because it's kind of a movement-esque type fight, but it's also just a stand there still fight. The overall healing needed for this fight is pretty raid-wide, especially when people stand on mines. Never stand on mines. Mines are bad. Mines have always been bad. Just don't stand on mines. That's the easiest thing to do. Heals needed for myself. You can see that I have a lot of absorb in this specific fight. Once again, there's not a lot of damage. It's all physical, and you're taunting on 2, and I'll talk about that later on. But not that intensive. But here's the problem. I failed to do something here, and you're going to notice on my specific cast where I've kind of messed up, and this is where I'm trying to point out to you. Remember all of the spells that you guys have as tanks. Just remember them. Damage here, it's high with Avenging Shield because there are adds in this fight, and though they're not really controllable, it helps when you have a DK tank to Gorfine's Grasp everything, so that's why Avenging Shield's damage is high. And in terms of actual spell casts completed, everything's pretty high, but then you're going to note here, Hand of the Protector, 10 times. I can't believe I only cast Hand of the Protector 10 times in this fight. It's like I forgot that I could heal myself. So, in terms of overall efficiency, in terms of my cast, I got every single thing off that I needed to, and look at that, Shield of the Righteous was a 100% cast efficiency, so fantastic. However, 10 Hand of the Protector casts, and only 8 of the 10 I actually did empowered, so what in the world am I doing? Outside of that, damage taken per second is pretty low. Damage done can be very elevated here. You saw me almost at a mil. When I actually ran Seraphim later on, when we came back and redid the fight, I was actually over a mil, at like 1.4, so it's a really high damage output fight, and the healing requirements really aren't that bad. So maybe that's why I didn't cast it that many times. So specific things we're going to do, we're going to tank Admiral right where we are because we want to be able to use that pod's ability. The person who jumps in that pod spams 1 on the boss and then spams 2 on the little Pyromancer ad. You don't spam 2 on the boss because it doesn't work. So we're swapping on 2, and the 2 stacks is Exploit Weakness. Now it is a frontal cone, so make sure that you as tanks are not stacked together, because then you will get a stack of Exploit Weakness, and of course that's going to increase the damage that you take. First one is 50% damage increase, the second one is 100%, and go on from there. You can see why it's a big deal. Now when ads spawn, you can see that the Pyromancer melted and it wasn't anything that was there. And then the secondary ads that you're going to deal with are Shock Troopers. Now they're going to leap into the range group, so you're going to lose DPS on them, but that's why it's good to have a DK tank to grip them back in so you can continue to do damage. If you can, on the Pyromancer, if you have the ability to, set a focus macro and interrupt their blast, because that Pyromancer should not get any cast off in this fight because it is not good. So in I guess the essence of the raid, stand still, which is kind of nice. I mean, it's been a while since we've been able to just stand still. I mean, there's so many kiting bosses in this raid tier. And what sucks is that we lost Consecrator Glyph, which allowed Consecration to move with us, and that made us a great kiting tank. Now we're a pretty awful kiting tank. Obviously you never turn your back as a tank, but if I can't have Consecration with me, I can't buff my Shield of the Righteous, which I lose a 20% buff on it. I can't buff my Hand of the Protector, which I lose a 20% buff on it, and it makes us very bad for kiting. Each boss in this specific fight is active for 90 seconds. So we get 90 seconds to do damage on these guys. So you need to make sure that you maximize all the damage that you do. Now, they do share health, so it's not like, okay, I got one at full health, then I gotta move on, and then I gotta move on, and we gotta do this cycle like 4 or 5 different times. We were actually able to complete this in a cycle, in I think just one cycle, maybe a cycle and a smidge. But we do have high damage output going on right now. So when we're tanking the Chief, you're going to notice these green pillar things right behind his health bar right now. Kind of hard to see. Let's see if we rotate here. What you're going to notice is that a shield is going to pop up. Now we have one specific person pop the shield. The dangerous thing about this shield is the boss is still doing exploit weakness during this and can hit everybody else in the raid group. So boss positioning on this one is really finicky, but it's very important. So when they place these down, what we learned is we don't want to place them down in 3 specific locations. We actually want to place them, pretty much grouped up, so that way we can get to it and we can leave the boss in one spot instead of moving him around and him having weird movement features. See, I'm still sick. I'm still in the same shirt because I'm still recording on the same day. But you just want to make sure that you have the boss positioned where you don't have to move him, and all we have to do is rotate 90 degrees, so he's still frontal cleaving out the shield, but he's not hitting everybody else behind him in the shield. Very important. And then that same person who's in that pod, when we're tanking the engineer, has to throw the shields over here, because every time Admiral's in her pod, she's going to cast this huge AoE damage, and I can't pronounce it. Fusilade. It's really late, even though I said good morning at the beginning of my videos, because it's kind of my thing. It's really late. So Fusilade, when she casts Fusilade, it's huge AoE damage, and if you don't have one of these nice little markers, or the little bubbles, it's going to hurt a lot. And so we actually have a healer cooldown that says, hey, just in case, we're going to blow all these all at the same time. And you can see here, I was actually outside the shield on that one, and it chunked me pretty well. It popped my face armor. And so be very cautious about how you're tanking this specific boss and where you're located for the shields and everything. The other thing is you'll see all these mines on the ground. Now the person inside the pod should be killing these mines, and what you see here is, yeah, we do a rotation and a smidge for this specific boss, but they should be blowing up the mines where we're going. They're currently blowing up mines where we are, which is great, so we don't blow them up and add damage to the actual group itself. Problem is, when we're about to transition here, because Admiral Sivrix is coming up in 2 seconds, what's going to happen is we turn and we go, oh no, there's some mines here, and then we turn and look again later on in the fight, and we see that there's a bunch of mines right in front of Engineer, so we actually pull him away from his pod so we can get the damage on him. Now, once again, Admiral jumps out, all the ads start coming back. It's just this rinse repeat once you get here. Now, the buff that stays on the individual who goes in the pod is 3 minutes long, 90-second rotations. You'll be able to get that same person in the pod. So we assign 2 people, 45 seconds per pod. And really, we try to jump them out a little early because that stacking debuff for them inside the pod does get pretty astronomical. And I bet you it's going to get even more astronomical in Mythic. So you see somebody jumping out right now, the pod opens, next person's going to jump in, pod closes, and so on and so forth. But it's definitely something to watch out that could potentially be going on here. What you noticed throughout this entire fight is my health pool is not really leaping that much. Because Shield of the Righteous is up quite a bit, and my Empowered Shield of the Righteous is up. I was lucky enough that the ads, the Shock Troopers, actually fixated on my DK tank, and I know he watches my videos and I'm going to make fun of him, his DPS was low, so I was like, how'd they fixate on you? But I'm pretty sure Gorfrium's Grab's got a huge taunts, or not taunts, aggro generation on it. If I don't play DK, so you can all correct me in the bottom of my video and say, you know, Pops, you're an idiot. It does nothing, but he got all of those ads, and I was, you know, kind of pleased with it. So I really didn't take a lot of damage. I bet you I will when, you know, we start getting into heroic and I actually start pushing my DPS versus, you know, kind of staying on the safe side. So we'll see here. Really, it's a roundabout fight. It does the same thing all around in circles and circles and circles. So you hit the key points, you know, exploit weakness, taunt on the twos. Other than that, guys, I hope you guys get some good loot on this. I'll catch you in my next videos. I'm still trying to pump them out, you know, late at night. I'm going through the night just trying to make sure that I get these things to you guys because, you know, I hope that it helps you. I wish you all the best on your loots, on your boss kills, and I'll catch you in the next videos. Hopefully soon. And I stay awake. Who knows? This coffee is getting really cold.